Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now, before we do get into today's first story, I do want to give you a trigger warning that there is miscarriage within the story, so if you do want to skip it, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. The story is from a deleted user who says, my 28 male, close friend 28 male, had a vasectomy and is keeping it a secret from his wife, 27 female, who is also a close friend. What do I do? This will be long. I apologize. I've known my friend Kevin and his wife, Emily, since high school, and we have stayed very close. The three of us went to different colleges, but they were all within an hour drive of each other, and we spent a lot of time together. They got together towards the end of our first year and got married soon after graduation. They had been married around 6 years, together around 9. After graduating, we all moved back to the metro area where we grew up, although we live about 45 minutes apart. Still, my wife and I spend a lot of time with them. She and Emily have grown to be very good friends and often hang out together without the husbands. Kevin and I also spend quite a bit of time together without the wives, as I was always closer to him than Emily anyway. Before getting married, Kevin and Emily had some early disagreements about children. Emily was very set on having children, and Kevin wasn't sure that he wanted any. Kevin eventually acquiesced and said he would think about it, and they didn't really discuss it again until after they got married. Around 5 years ago, Emily gradually started bringing up the fact that she was ready to start trying to get pregnant. Kevin was adamantly against having children at that point and told her he wanted to wait until he was at a more stable point in his career. He was still at his first post-college job, and while he was making good money for someone his age, the job he was in generally isn't long-term. Think of a field like consulting, where junior-level employees typically have a 2 to 4 year shelf life before they're expected to move on to something else. He told her that he wanted to wait a few years, as the expectation was that she would probably stay home for a year or two after having the baby. During this ongoing discussion, Kevin confided in me that, while the career explanation was true, it wasn't the whole truth. He was still unsure that he actually wanted to have kids at all and wanted to put it off until he was sure that he really wanted to. He knew it was unfair to Emily not to disclose his feelings on this, but he was worried about her reaction, given how adamant she was about having children. After much discussion, Emily agrees to wait until Kevin has a more permanent job. Around 2.5 years ago, that happened. He took a job in-house with one of his long-term clients and ended up with a small pay jump. Much better benefits, a more predictable schedule with less travel, and a lot more job security. Almost immediately after he took the new job, Emily brought up getting pregnant, and Kevin agreed to start trying. As far as I knew at the time, Kevin agreed and Emily stopped taking birth control. Flash forward to the present. No children yet. Up until this point, as I understand it anyway, their only attempts at conceiving have been to continue their normal activities, sans birth control. Since this hasn't worked, Emily has started discussing the possibility of going to a fertility doctor to see if there are any problems. The women on her mother's side of the family, mother, grandmother, and aunt, and her cousin, have a history of having problems conceiving, although with eventual success. I'm not sure what the exact issues are, but I know that Emily's grandmother and mother were 29 before they were able to conceive, with both trying since their early 20s. Yesterday, Kevin confided in me that before he left his previous job, he had a vasectomy without telling Emily. After picking my jaw up off the floor, I started asking him questions to figure out why the hell he would do that. Apparently, after he began to put out feelers for a new job, a process that took about a year, Emily had brought up going ahead and getting pregnant. Kevin pushed back pretty hard to wait, and she told him that was fine. Evidently, Kevin was really leaning towards not wanting children. I wasn't aware of this since we never really talked about it. After the aforementioned conversation, after he got the new job and they started trying to conceive, I just figured he'd changed his mind and got on board. Shortly after they once again agreed to wait, Kevin became suspicious that Emily wasn't taking her birth control. He would check her pill packs, but wasn't able to confirm one way or another if she was taking them regularly or not. According to him, Emily was acting suspiciously, not sure what the specifics were, and was initiating sex much more often than usual. There was something about her periods as well, but I don't remember the reasoning behind that discussion. Evidently, after considering the evidence available to him, he was convinced that she had stopped taking her birth control and was trying to get pregnant after they agreed to wait. He was angry, but didn't want to confront her with evidence that could be explained away easily by her. At this point, I didn't know if she was actually taking her birth control or not. He could have been right or just paranoid. Given his lack of trust of Emily and his increasing desire not to have children, he decided to get a vasectomy and not tell her. There was a point where he was traveling for his job, which happened often, and was going to be a few states away for about a week and a half. He traveled to this city frequently and was somehow able to arrange to get a vasectomy done in that time. The initial trip was supposed to be 10 days, but a weekend snowstorm caused his flight to be cancelled, and his employer ended up needing him to stay another few days anyway. Again, I have no idea how he was able to arrange visits to a urologist and a vasectomy, not to mention the follow-up visits. I'm also unclear on how long it took him to do this. The timing worked out to where the soreness and swelling was gone by the time he returned from the trip, and according to him, the scar is completely unnoticeable unless you shine a flashlight on the bottom of his balls and look closely. So, in the past 3-ish years, she has never suspected anything, I guess. He has always had his insurance information sent to his office, had enough spare cash socked away to cover his copay and antibiotics and pain medication. And he changed his insurance when he took his new job, so there aren't any records laying around or in an online account. So that was all well and good for a few years. But now he is in a tight spot because if Emily goes to the fertility doctor and things check out on her end, the next logical step is for him to get tested, at which point it will be obvious to the doctor that he had a vasectomy, or at least he thinks this. I don't know whether that's true or if the test would just show him shooting blanks. He gambled on the fact that Emily's family has a history of problems conceiving, so maybe there will be issues there to place the blame on. He has no idea what to do, but guesses that he can stretch this out a year or two before he has to go get tested. I'm really struggling with this. On the one hand, Kevin is my best friend. On the other, he is being totally deceitful to Emily, one of my closest friends. I'm not judging him for not wanting kids, but this is something he should have communicated to her before now. If he had talked to me about the situation before he got the vasectomy, I would have told him that he needed to break things off with her and move on if he was sure he didn't want kids. It wouldn't have been fair to her, and it wouldn't be fair to him if they ended up having children, by accident or design, when he didn't want to. But that's not what happened. He's been lying to her for years. I can't tell my wife about this because I have no doubt she will call Emily and tell her immediately. I'm trying to decide whether I should tell Emily, tell Kevin that he has to tell Emily or I will, or completely stay out of the situation. I feel bad about the entire situation and I don't want to break up their marriage or destroy one or more friendships, but I also don't want Emily to waste any more of her time when having kids is such a big deal to her. What the hell do I do? Edit 1. Thanks for the advice, everyone. I think I've decided on a course of action. I'm meeting up with Kevin for drinks in an hour or so. I'm going to give him an ultimatum. Either he tells Emily within 3 days or I will. I'm also going to tell my wife after meeting with Kevin because I can't keep something like this from her and live with myself. I will try to get her to sit on the information as long as possible, but if she tells Emily, then I can't fault her for doing what is probably the right thing. I'm going to tell Kevin that I'm telling my wife as soon as I get home from meeting with him and impress upon him the strong possibility that she will tell Emily before he has a chance. This will give him an incentive to tell her sooner rather than later. I'll probably ask my wife to let me be there when she tells Emily, if she decides that she won't wait. That way we can both be there for support, and I might have a chance of staying friends with her after all this is over. I'll post an update at some point after the shit hits the fan. Thanks again, everyone. Edit 2. Just left from talking with Kevin. I took the exact approach outlined in my first edit, and it went as well as one could hope. He was understanding and apologized for putting me in this situation. He understood my need to tell my wife and said that he wished that he had taken that approach in his own marriage. He realizes he needs to tell Emily and that the marriage is likely over. After some reflection, he thinks this is probably for the best because she will never trust him again and he really doesn't want kids. He's going to sit down and talk with her tomorrow afternoon. Edit 2.5. Just finished talking with my wife. Holy fuck, I'll have one hell of an update soon. I don't have time to write it out right now because I need to go to sleep. I'm pretty drained from all this. I'll update this sometime tomorrow. I'll either edit this thread or post a new one if it takes me longer to write. Stay tuned. If you like drama, just fucking wait. Fucking fuck. Edit 3. So, a lot has happened since last night. Holy hell. First off, Emily isn't pregnant, as far as anyone knows. So sorry if you're hoping for that. I'll try to write what happened chronologically so it makes more sense. Here we go. So I told my wife everything last night after I got home from meeting with Kevin. As you might expect, she was absolutely floored that he would do this to her, given how much she wants kids. She didn't take it as bad as I thought she would though, which was weird at the time. I really thought her reaction was going to be to say that we need to tell Emily immediately, drive over to their house in a blinding rage, etc. Instead, she told me that she had something to tell me that she'd been keeping a secret for a long while. Evidently, a little over a year ago, Emily and my wife were discussing Kevin and Emily's attempts at conceiving. It wasn't unusual for them to talk about this, since at that point they'd been trying for over a year. On this night though, Emily had quite a bit to drink and opened up to my wife more than usual. Emily was desperate to start going to the fertility doctor, but Kevin wanted to wait because they hadn't been trying to for very long. Unless I misunderstood him, Kevin seemed to imply that Emily had only recently started suggesting going to a fertility doctor. Nope, she'd been telling him she wanted to go for over a year. My wife asked her why she wanted to go so soon, since they hadn't been trying that long. Emily told her that she had been trying for nearly 4 years. What the fuck? The following explanation of this pieced together from my conversation with my wife, what Kevin told me, and my own inferences. I've tried as best as I can to make the pieces fit together in a way that makes sense. I'll update and edit if I find out any of the details that aren't correct. Emily stopped taking her birth control while Kevin was still at his old job, before he ever started looking for a new one. She pretended to take her pills, hoping she would get pregnant and she could blame it on the fact that birth control isn't 100% effective. Side note, my wife was probably floored by the revelation and does not condone her behavior, but continued listening to try and support her friend through what has been a really difficult experience. She stopped taking her pills around 6 months before Kevin started looking for a job. This is the same time at which she started pressuring Kevin to move on from that job. I guess it took 6 months to convince him to finally start the process. So Kevin agrees that it's time to leave his job, starts talking with headhunters, gently approaching his current clients, etc. They have the above mentioned talk about going ahead and trying to conceive. Kevin says no, she agrees to wait. The reason she brought it up on that particular day is that she thought she might already be pregnant, given that her period was late and she'd been trying for 6 months. A couple of days later, Emily got a pack of pregnancy tests, and 3 positive results later, she is pregnant. She's excited as hell but wants to wait a bit to tell Kevin, given that they had just agreed to wait to have kids until he got a new job. Fuck. My wife thinks Emily was probably around 2 to 3 weeks along at this point. About a week and a half later, Kevin is out of state for work, and Emily is planning to bring the news on him when he gets back. He's gone from Sunday night and is supposed to return late on Friday. On Monday night, Emily has a miscarriage. Evidently, this is one of the common mishaps that the women in her family are prone to. My wife told me that Emily's mother had at least 3 miscarriages before successfully carrying her first pregnancy to term. Emily is absolutely devastated. She doesn't tell Kevin about it because then he'll realize that she hasn't been taking her birth control and shit will hit the fan. She calls my wife, who goes over to her house to comfort her. Note, my wife does not know about the miscarriage at this point, just that Emily was really upset over something. Emily only told her the truth a year ago. I actually think I remember what night this happened on because it was unusual for my wife to drive all the way to Kevin and Emily's house to hang out with her. Usually they met somewhere in the middle. So Emily is obviously upset about this, but manages to get herself together by the time Kevin gets back. She doesn't say anything about it, but immediately starts trying to conceive again. My guess is that this would be the time where Kevin becomes suspicious about her behavior. He was right that she wasn't taking her birth control, but only realized it after she had a miscarriage and tried even harder to get pregnant again. As far as anyone knows, Emily never got pregnant again between this time and when Kevin had the vasectomy. During a routine visit, Emily asked her OB/GYN if there were any problems and told her about the miscarriage. This happened before Kevin started his new job and they officially agreed to start trying to conceive. I don't know if Emily told him, I don't know, that she had stopped taking her birth control or if she implied that it was accidental. The OB/GYN identified something with her uterus that could possibly cause an issue, but said she couldn't be sure from a routine exam. She suggested that Emily see a fertility specialist and gave her a referral. Evidently, the specialist wanted to do the first consultation with both Kevin and Emily there, so Emily couldn't start that process until Kevin was on board with conceiving. So that's the state of things. Emily was lying to Kevin about being on birth control for at least 1.5 years. My wife never told me because she wasn't sure what to do, since they had officially started trying to have children by the time Emily told her all about this. My wife decided to keep the information to herself because it didn't matter at that point anyway. I called Kevin and told him about this late last night. He He wasn't as upset as I thought he would be, because he already figured that Emily had stopped taking her birth control back then, although it was actually 6 months before he caught on. He was pretty upset about the miscarriage and felt really bad that Emily had to keep this to herself for all these years. As of right now, he hasn't talked to her yet. That will happen later this afternoon or tonight. Fuck. I may post an update after he talks to her tonight. In all likelihood though, I'll wait a week or so and post an update after this has all died down and hopefully they've decided what they're going to do. It just feels like it's one of those stories where everyone was literally making the worst possible decisions. Kevin was absolutely wrong for secretly getting this vasectomy and letting his wife spend years believing that they were trying for a baby, even knowing she wanted children more than anything. You know, that's just such a huge betrayal in itself. Stolen years of informed choice from her. But then in the edits, it flips it again, and Emily had secretly stopped taking birth control months earlier because she wanted to get pregnant against the agreement that they had made, hoping that she could pass it off as birth control failure. And basically neither of them trusted the other to have a conversation that they should have had years earlier, that I do or do not want children, what happens from here? Instead, they were trying to almost force the outcome that they each wanted in secret. And personally, I just don't see any way that they could move past this. Now also, I was going to cover some of the comments on the back of that first post, but a lot of them were posting before the edit, so if I start reading them now, it'd probably get confusing, so we're going to go straight to the update on this one. And it said, well, Reddit, the situation has resolved itself. Kevin and Emily talked for a long time yesterday, and they've agreed that it's best for them to split up. Too much damage done, and the lies they told each other were too big. Not to mention the kids issue. I wasn't there obviously, but I've talked to them both and they seem better than I expected. Both of them are really angry, but as much is directed as themselves as each other. Strangely enough, they were both really glad for my involvement. Emily wasn't even pissed at my wife for telling me about the birth control fiasco. I have no idea whether my wife and I will be able to remain friends with either of them. They were both really deceitful to each other and to us, but I think I'm willing to move past that eventually. We'll see how this goes. Thanks to everyone who commented. I don't think I would have approached this situation correctly were it not for some of the responses I got here. TLDR, friend lied to his wife about wanting kids, but a vasectomy. Kept it a secret for 3 years. Wife lied to friend about waiting to have kids. Stopped taking birth control for 1.5 years without telling him. They're getting a divorce. But now, I'm going to turn this one straight to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Did it end as you expected it to? Was there another way around it? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Now our next story comes from Relationship Advice, subreddit from Important Talk 8808, and it says, I 25 female don't want my boyfriend 25 male to ask for my hand in marriage. I 25 female have been dating my boyfriend 25 male for almost 2 years now. We met in college and things have been an absolute dream so far. He's kind and supportive, comes from a great background, and always puts me first. We've always known that we both want to get married someday. We've discussed at length what that means to us, and our views align for the most part. The problem is he wants to ask my incredibly abusive father for my hand in marriage. For context, my father was physically, emotionally, and financially abusive to everyone in our household. I vividly remember the way the tone of the entire home shifted when we saw his car pull up in the driveway. My parents never got divorced. They're separated now, but are more interested in keeping up appearances than actually going through the process of divorce. That being said, I had rather a traumatic childhood. I don't think my boyfriend understands this, as he grew up in a very loving and supportive two-parent household. His parents are still very much in love today. I feel like we have the same conversation fairly often. I said, "Oh, when are you going to ask?" He says, "When I speak with your father." I say, "I don't even speak to my father, and he hasn't had a hand in raising me outside of financial obligations since late in middle school. He literally moved out of our family home to get away from us. I don't feel comfortable with that." He said, "Well, I've got to do it the right way. I'm still going to propose regardless, so it doesn't even matter what his answer is." I said, "So why even do it?" And then we go round and round in circles like that. My final stance is this: if after everything I've told you, you still feel the need to ask him and do it the right way, then you might as well just not propose. Is this an unreasonable decision? I almost feel like he's not convinced that he's a bad person. I've already deemed my dad undeserving of our participating in this convo. Why can't he accept that? Bloody red flags all over the place. OP's already said repeatedly that her father abused her physically, emotionally, and financially, and that she barely speaks to him, and that she doesn't want him involved in such an important moment. And instead of listening, like being concerned that your partner, someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with, doesn't want you to communicate with this man, instead of listening to that, the boyfriend keeps insisting to do it the right way. Come on now. The right way is surely respecting your future wife's wishes, not wanting to follow a tradition that gives an abusive parent a position of honor that they haven't earned. That's wild. And you know, if he can't put her feelings above an outdated custom now, I'd be questioning how he'd handle anything in the future, really. But the top commenter on this said, I'd have one final conversation with him. My father was and is incredibly abusive to me. I do not want him in any aspect of my life. You insisting on a misogynistic tradition over respecting my wishes makes me deeply concerned about how you'll take my concerns throughout our life together. You can examine why you're so comfortable disregarding what's important to me, or we can end our relationship right now. Commenter replies saying, if he's asking for anybody's blessing, it should be the mother, or the people who raised OP and loved and supported her. Explain to him that if that misogynistic, antiquated tradition is so important to him, plus the thing about disrespecting OP's trauma and just blatantly disregarding her expressed and explicit boundary, then he can go to the important people, like the mother. But if he insists on still asking the father after that, OP will know where his misogynistic priorities lie, and that he does not respect her as an autonomous and independent adult, and definitely won't as his wife. The commenter says, jumping in to say that these replies are probably hard to read because your mind may be filling up with all the ways Reddit doesn't understand you or your boyfriend. It can be very, very hard to hear this type of advice, but truly, it's a gift that this community is reaching out to give you some honest feedback. You're 25, and your primary model for a marriage is your abusive father and your mother who won't divorce him to keep up appearances. I think everyone who is responding to your post is very concerned that you can't see a glaring red flag because your standards for what makes a good man are way, way too low. This internet mum hopes you can take this all in and put a very long pause on any further discussion of marriage to give you time to process if this relationship is really good for you, and be proud of yourself for asking this question. That took courage to put yourself out there. And a reply to that comment said, this is such a kind response. I hope OP reads it and is able to take it in. If you are reading this, OP, I wanted to tell you a story of something that happened to one of my friends. She grew up with an abusive dad who would beat her mum and who yelled and screamed all the time. She never wanted to end up like her mum and tried to find someone who wasn't like her dad. The man she ended up with seemed so much better. He never yelled and screamed. He was never physically violent for the first years. He seemed like the polar opposite of her dad. But he wasn't. He didn't have to yell and scream because he preferred mind games. He denied her access to bank accounts and chipped away at her self-esteem. He is just different flavor of the abusive dad she tried so hard to avoid. And like you, she started dating him right around the end of college before she had time to process the abuse she experienced as a child. I'm not saying your boyfriend is just like this other man. However, be careful comparing the early years of a relationship to the one kind of abuse you know. The early years are always the best and can be deceiving. You end up like a frog in slowly boiling water as bad behaviors start trickling in and get normalized. Like the person above me said, you're being smart and brave to question him ignoring your feelings like this. Trust your gut and don't settle just because he seems better than your dad. That bar is set in hell, so better can still be pretty bad. Hope you'll give yourself time to sit with all these responses and decide how you want to navigate your future on your terms. So OP came back in 2 months later with their final update and says, so I ended up breaking up with him. I want to start off by saying thank you to anyone who replied to my last post. I'm someone who can be blinded by the good in people, but your comments put things into perspective for me. I did end up showing him the post, and his initial reaction was that everyone commenting was a single bitter bitch. Yeah, I'd never heard him speak about anyone that way. I guess the mask finally dropped. A couple of hours after that, he ended up saying, fine, I won't ask your dad, just your mum. This was definitely just an attempt to save things since he could tell I was being distant with him. We dated for about another 2 months after that. I know. I was trying to find ways to mend things because I'm a dummy. After the initial conversation, I went through a fast track of realizations and saw that we were so misaligned in so many different ways. I'm not even sure how we had made it as far as we did. Eventually, it got to a point where I think he was just doing things to get me to break up with him since things clearly weren't working out. Some of those things include taking a trip and staying with a friend that regularly cheats on her boyfriend. saying I didn't sign up for a therapy session every time I would try to talk through things, letting his phone die every time he went out, being overly cautious with his phone when we were previously lax about opening each other's phones. Not in a snooping way, mainly for finding documents, responding to texts or emails for one another, etc. Unfortunately, the list goes on, but I'd rather not relive all that. Clearly he got what he wanted and deserved though. He did the standard, "Oh no, please can we work this out" song and dance for a couple of weeks after I broke up with him before finally giving up. I'm clearly not great at picking them, but I'm glad that I was able to get out of there before 2 years became 10 years. Again, thank you to anyone who gave advice on the original post. I really appreciate it. I'm not much of a writer, so I'm really sorry if this sucks. I hope this also answers a couple of questions folks had in the comments of the original post. But now, I'm going to turn this one straight to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Now, just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being here. Truly, it is absolutely amazing. I'm forever thankful, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.